Okay, so my name is Philip Martin, and I'm the co-owner of Philip Martin Gallery here in Los Angeles with Portia Hine. And I hope you've had a chance to meet Portia either at the gallery or at the fairs. This is a conversation that I have really been looking forward to for a very long time. Um, John and I are in the midst of what has been a real curatorial dream, which was the opportunity to do a project with James Castle. And John very graciously agreed to participate with a selection of incredible paintings and works on paper and pastel box constructions. And so we've talked a lot about the show, and you can sort of see some images here. But what we're going to really do here in this conversation is talk really about John's work because it's been such a big period for him with a lot of big new ideas. How are you doing today, John?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. And likewise, very excited. This has been a awesome project to be a part of. Really thrilling and very grateful for the opportunity. So thank you.
Awesome. So, basically, this has been something that I've enjoyed. I think the materiality of talking about Castle and the engagement that he had was a nice way for us to just continue a conversation that we've also had in your work, um, and really just enjoy affinities and that kind of thing. And so here is a series of your pastel box constructions on the wall. Visitors who came to see Ingleby's booth in Miami last year will have seen some more constructed pieces. Perhaps you can walk us through a little bit about what that means. And also, your work is currently in an amazing show at Ingleby right now around Franz Walter. And then you have a solo show coming up there in September. So lots for people to talk about. So do you want to maybe just talk about what we're seeing here in these pieces, or anything that kind of comes to mind?
Yeah, so with these pieces, they start off from basically the lids of pastel boxes as I accumulate them, as I use up the pastels. And um, they often evoke just based on the way that pastel rubs on the
Mm-hmm.
lid. You
Yeah.
get marks, you get sort of striations and little collections of dust and color, and they sort of suggest pictures more or
Huh?
less to me.
Yeah.
And the surface becomes really, really fun to work with and against.
Yeah.
And they are constructed in the sense that I will, take the box, build a frame for it, and like the paintings, which are on wood, and then I build a frame for it, and then I make the painting on this already framed panel.
Yeah.
It's important for me always to feel like I made the whole thing, to have a satisfaction and a gratification in starting with something that's not a painting or a pastel
Mm-hmm.
picture or drawing and making it into that.
Mm-hmm.
The manipulation of the material is the fun part for me.
Mm-hmm.
It is why I like painting because it's all part of this same I guess, experience for me of just dealing with raw materials and making them into something new. So
Yeah.
the boxes and the way that, like this one in particular, with the
Mm-hmm.
pieces of wood constructed around it to make the frame, these things sort of accumulate over time. That the wood that's around the pastel boxes on my easel in my studio, I have little pieces of wood that I can rest my paintings on, and they get little splashes of color on them. And then I work against that and, oh, this needs another little touch of red here or something.
Yeah.
But it's a sort of process of control and chance, and a
Yeah.
constant negotiation between those two things. And that sort of play of those two systems and the material at large, when I began to really like work within those confines and within that way of thinking, um, picture making became just a whole lot more fun and opened up for me. And there's a few artists in particular that sort of opened that door for me. And James Castle is one of them. He's one
Yeah.
of the prominent ones for me that showed me how many different things you can use and ways you can use them to get to to get to a picture in the end. And for me, there always does need to be a picture in the end. It's
Yeah.
like using things, you know, that aren't pictures to make pictures. It's fun.
Hmm.
And for those of you who haven't seen, you should look into his work. He's using materials in very evocative, um, playful ways, and it's mesmerizing to see. And uh, I think the end goal for him, just as myself, is to get to these points where you have a sort of dual experience of a interesting picture and an interesting object.
Yeah, I mean, you're raising a bunch of interesting points, and I think trying to there's going to be a few to to kind of catch up there. I mean, I think on the one hand, I'm really hearing you talking a little bit about inventing one's own mediums, so to speak, which I think is an interesting point. You know, and it parallels that in a certain sense we're always inventing our experience in the lived moment kind of as it happens, which you're also pointing to a little bit with the box constructions like the one we're looking at here, because as I hear you speaking, I feel that I'm hearing you saying that with the box constructions, perhaps because there's some chance driven marks with, say, pastels bouncing around the box, it kind of leads to a suggestion of image that maybe becomes a door that you can walk through with the pastels. And I know with also paintings, you know, you also have this other process, and we can maybe get to that with the paintings where you you have a feeling of immediacy and quickness in the painting, but that actually is coming together from working on a given painting for months and months and months and redoing it over and over to kind of achieve that, but also to kind of create for the viewer a certain sense too of an immediacy that then leads to mystery the more they look at it, or and as other parts of their being, so to speak, get involved in what they're seeing. Does any of that kind of resonate?
Absolutely. The immediacy that you talk about, like the thing feeling, it's a really hard thing to describe. The thing feeling fast in a sense, feeling as if it all happened at once, as if it came into being at once, is this like almost impossible uh, sort of goalpost to get to, and
Yeah.
it's a thing that for me when I see things that I love that really capture my attention in a sort of uncontrollable way where you're captivated. There are always paintings and or sculptures or pictures that have this sort of feeling as if they've always been. And it's sort of one and the same. The thing
Yeah.
has, that has always been feels
Amazing.
like it must have come into being all at once.
Totally.
And and that's sort of I feel like we're always trying, at least me, I'm always trying to get to a place where a thing feels like an awesome experience in nature. And it's the same feeling we have in an awesome experience in
Yeah.
nature, where there's an incredible permanence
Yeah.
to the experience that you're having in front of a beautiful landscape or a beautiful tree or a small flower. And there's a incredible delicacy that you sense that it all erupted at once.
Yeah.
And to get to that point in in art, in two-dimensional art and visual art,
Yeah.
it's um it's necessary, I think, to have this material relationship.
Yeah.
And you said it's about sort of like one inventing their own materials. And I think that's part of it. We need to have our own way of making that feels sort of like natural and an
Yeah.
extension of our physiognomy or
Yeah.
whatever, our way of moving. And and it takes a long time to get there. You got to
It
play with a
does.
lot of things. You got to experiment with different brushes,
Yeah.
with different types of paint, with
Yeah.
different ways of mark making. And it
And you have
takes
to
a
learn
really
to listen.
long,
You have to learn to listen, So you've
yeah,
got like attention, and then you've also got the listening part where you, like a good scientist, allow the data to come back to you, and maybe this hypothesis that you had isn't maybe the right, but there's a whole, new hypothesis is just many new questions to ask. So it's a joyous process, but I think it can freak a person out if you're sitting there thinking, that this is about production.
yeah. Oh, right. It's not. It's a
Yeah.
anytime a thing becomes efficient, an efficient way of making is not a a good way of making necessarily, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, there are parts of the thing that you should figure out how to do quicker so it doesn't take up too much time, like,
Yeah.
figure out ways to put the panels together or whatever. But there needs to be a resistance to that,
Yeah.
um, both from my end in terms of uh, I don't want the thing to be easy. I want there to be a puzzle to solve, but also
Mm.
from the end of the materials, there needs to be a feeling like I'm getting them to do something they're not supposed to do almost.
Yeah. Well, these are interesting because they have this very clear physical presence. And as you say, the use of the box lid, it places image in an interesting place in the work because it, as you say, there's a materiality that somehow ends up being like perfectly appropriate to what the image is, but not in a way that you necessarily expected one way or the other.
Yeah, and so in this one, you can see some of them have paper glued and collaged to the box,
Now, where
and
is where is that in this one?
so you can see sort of around the edge of the box, you see these little bits of orange coming out around the side.
Ah, okay.
That's the actual box. The white is paper, and you can see
Ah,
where
okay.
these sort of folds and stuff happen. And that
Right.
happened just by chance of
Yeah.
trying to clean off pastel on bits of paper that I had around.
Oh,
And I had a
interesting.
piece of paper with a lot of glue on it, and I
Yeah.
liked the way the pastel held.
Oh, that's
So
so
then,
interesting.
that becomes another way of, again, of just like, oh, here's a chance encounter with a new way of working the material.
Well, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, and we're about to kind of go and look at some monotypes, but I feel a really strong urge to. Did I ever tell you about the cave paintings in Nayo that I saw in France? Did we talk
No,
about this? Oh,
I
okay.
don't think so.
Have you ever been and seen cave art like that?
I have not in person. I've looked at it quite a bit, but I haven't got the pleasure to see it in person.
Well, one day maybe you can go to Nayo. It's in France, and I think it's one of the few caves that you can still go to. Other caves, the humidity is such that you can't go in there anymore. So they have a facsimile cave replica. I've never seen it, but my understanding is that's what you see at Lascaux. And I
Right.
don't know if that makes a difference, but in my experience at Nio, which is apparently there's a vent in the cave somehow, so it's not really so much of an issue. But basically, it's just your quest for image, or the connection. It just reminds me because when you go to Nio, you're in a river ravine essentially, like a with cliffs, and then there's a river. I think there's a river, if I recall, or stream or something. And then halfway up the 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 side of the cliff is a hole. And so first off, you're like, I wonder if that was attractive to the human mind. And then to get to the cave, you actually have to walk like something like a kilometer and a half down this tunnel. And that's a whole thing. And people have discovered that and had their whole experience going back to the 1700s, if not before,
Good.
when they discovered it. And then they're French, so they're really good at the show personship aspect of the whole thing, which is awesome. So you're back there and you go all the way back, and then you're in where the cave is or where the art is. And they are like, we're just going to turn off the light and give ourselves some time in absolute pitch total darkness. And then we're going to turn this on, and then you're going to see where this is. And at the moment that they do it, or that they did it, they just flip the light. And there's this most amazing drawings of bison, whatever would have been like ibexes, I guess, or I don't even, I don't know, large
Mhm.
scale. The line quality is absolutely unbelievable. The charcoal that there is unbelievable. And the drawing is absolutely done with the contour of the cave itself.
Yeah.
The whole thing is this like incredible thing. And I'm just saying, like, what you're describing to me is what you experienced there. I didn't have any thoughts of what this was going to be, but when I went to it, I was like, oh, you're just like, this is literally on the deepest visceral level why we make art. And what you're
Yeah.
describing somehow brought that up to me.
No, and I think it is. I think it's the most. It's a natural way of being. It's a natural
Mhm.
way of working, of taking. It is in many ways the human advantage in the animal kingdom, the ability to take materials and manipulate them
Mhm.
into something new. And when that process is like at its best, it it is like you say, there's this full marriage of material and form and image. And when that process is too refined
Mhm.
and it becomes stale. It
Yeah.
becomes stale. We've all seen things that are like too good or something. They're too smooth. It's too clean. It's
Yeah.
too sterile, you know? We see it in
Yeah.
architecture. We see it in all of the things that humans make.
Yeah.
And we need that more that connective like tissue to nature to be there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, of course, we're going to move to the monotypes, which I think is a beginning of, oh no, I guess we're going to move to the paintings unless we wanted to move to the monotypes first. But when we get to the monotypes, it's an opportunity to talk about potentially, I think it's an interesting technology, monotypes. And of course, this is a time when we're talking about technology because we're talking about AI. And I think one of the things about AI that's really fascinating is that if you are an artist and you study how the mind works and how we create and put things together, I think AI is incredible because
Yeah.
to have an inanimate object be able to make just tells us so much about what we do. And I think it's an incredible opportunity. I'm not really one of those people like this is going to eat my job. I'm more like
Yeah.
this is really allows us to do something. So I mean, going off the rails perhaps a little bit there, but again, you want to talk to a little bit about some of the paintings and where they come from and
Sure. So in image wise, um, subject wise, the pictures are always from experience, filtered through memory, filtered through drawing, and a huge part of the way that I make things and the way that I've always sort of been inclined to make things from when I was a child, just laying on the floor drawing,
Mhm.
was to redraw things ad nauseum.
Hmm.
to copy my own drawings
Hmm.
and just change like one thing at a time. Um,
You've always done that?
and yeah, and
Wow.
it's not until when I started
So
painting, I
not
got
just
away
like
from
I
it.
like this motif, I'm going to draw knights one more time, but literally changing them compositionally and such.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
in just like basically one way at a time, almost,
Yeah.
you know, try to redo each mark except for this one and see what that does, you know? And
Okay.
or if I feel like I made a mistake, then I have to redo it, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and when I started painting, I had gotten away from that. I was just trying to learn how to paint, to deal with the materials.
Yeah.
But you brought up the monotypes a little bit, and what the monotypes did for me was reintroduce that way of thinking back into the way I paint. Whereas with the monotypes, and we'll get there later, you're able to make multiple at a time of the same thing without it ever being the same.
Yeah.
Um, and the painting, you mentioned again earlier in the painting how I rework an image and repaint it and repaint it. It's all part of this sort of negotiation back and forth with the material and with my sort of uh, the idea I have in my head. I usually have some sort of like finished visual in my brain
Yeah.
of what I want the thing to be. And of course, I can't ever truly get there.
Yeah.
But in reworking the image over and over, I can get close. So with this painting, um, I started gessoing my panels with a
Yeah.
sort of thick white
And
gesso
that's
that
something for people
I
to look out for as we go through these images. They'll see
yeah,
this.
and
Yeah.
that's sort of new, but I realized I just had this old discarded panel
Hmm.
from years ago that had gesso on it, and I was just playing around, and I realized how easily I could wipe, just how easily I could clean the image and start again.
Hmm.
And that felt like a good thing to try out in a
Yeah.
more formal way. So I was able to, make this painting, not get it right, make a few marks, scratch into the surface, make sure I notate sort of like where the branches were, wipe everything away, and then start again and start again. And with that, I got this really nice layered sort of blue that
Hmm.
happened over, 7 or 8 times of redoing this image over the course of a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I just really enjoyed the surface quality that it presented, and it's sort of um, now feels like a way I almost like have to work. Like
Yeah.
it
It's
feels like
interesting.
such a it feels very potent. So that this was really the first of those
Oh, that's interesting.
where I
Well,
really committed to that idea of wiping away and
yeah.
starting anew, wiping away and starting anew, as opposed to just painting over and
Yeah.
starting again.
Well, we'll move on to more paintings, but I mean, I think the viewers can, this is what I would point out is sort of look at this line here and look at this
Hmm.
here. And of course, this kind of thing up here where we have different ways of using pattern and mark making and the signature is something that but then I would also add there's a painting of some benches in the show and the crispness of the line work that's in this painting and that painting. It's just very, yeah, it's beautiful and crisp. It has that nice feeling to it.
Yeah.
And then this is a great one. This is the kind of thing that I love to see. It's so fun, like the feeling of realizing this is maybe 150 feet from you, and it's as if the grouse or whatever bird they are have been almost like kicked up somehow by you entering the scene. And this
Yeah.
work in here is it's just really, really nice.
Yeah. Ospreys, actually. We
Oh
get a good
yeah.
amount of ospreys here. And there's such a wild bird. They just look like such aggressive predators. They like, some things are sort of menacing animals, and they're one of those animals. And so I saw those two flying together, and I
Yeah.
felt
And
very,
birds are a big part of your work. And of course, you are very close to this wetland and you have we've talked about this. You know, you're a pretty avid bird watcher, if that's what we'll call it, or bird connector, communer with,
Yeah.
communer with, and you have extremely good vision, which is something I'm going to go ahead and spill to the audience. I think it's quite good, in fact. So that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Like you said, I live in this area of the Great Egg Harbor River watershed, which is a massive migratory bird stopping point on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So it's uh it's fun to go out on my bike or go on these walks and see what I see, and it sort of provides a twofold purpose. Obviously, I get to see cool birds, but also that's where so much of the imagery comes from is
Yeah.
from those days.
Another thing that's been happening more in the work is, you know, you'd mentioned that you're starting with something, the work's framed, you have a support earlier on, and part of the enjoyment of that. What about also talking just a little bit about how you're using the wood and the tones, for example, between, say, you know, in this one here and here?
Yeah. So I've found I like a few different kinds of wood to work on. For like the panels with the gesso, those are usually birch plywood and they're really smooth and I get a really nice surface to start from. But for a lot of the ones where you're seeing the wood grain, those are on oak panels.
Mm,
And the wood grain, when I when I prime the panels with like a clear primer, the wood grain gets raised. And if anybody's like familiar with woodworking, you often do that before you stain wood. You give a little bit of water or on the wood, it pops the grain, and then it's going to hold the stain more. And it does the same thing as the sort of pastel lids with the various markings from the pastels. Once I prime the panel, rub a color of paint into it, essentially like staining the wood, I get these, I get some suggestions of the verticals in this one, for instance, felt
yeah.
like I needed to use that with that grain,
Hmm.
and a tree felt like a good place to start. And that one, the osprey one, are actually the same piece of wood that I sort of cut into two, and they're sort of the
Yeah.
top halves. And
It's fun because the trunks also are in a similar place, and you can see it makes sense. It
yeah,
totally makes sense.
Yeah, and so the
And the
the
pop of
wood,
the color of the white, I mean, right there is such a moment. Tim Garwood and I were out, and he was talking about a field of flowers and really interestingly focusing on the very smallest flowers. And he was just saying, you know, just what color can be like when it's really small like that within a field, just how intense and, you know, it can be.
yeah, yeah, and it becomes a real focal point. It
Yeah.
carries so much weight. It feels dense,
Yeah.
and so much of the way I think about making composing is is like is like balancing a scale is with weight, and so like these small areas of a bright color, even that dark, the black of the chimneys, they carry almost as much weight as the full, you know, green of the tree in some
Yeah.
ways. They balance it just because they are more well, they're so dark.
Yeah.
They just suck the eye in a little bit.
Yeah. And of course, this one, I'd say of all of the ones, I mean, there's a lot, but for the feeling of that gesso, this really has that feeling. There's a lot of range also in what the wood grain is doing, the gesso is doing. And then, of course, the laying in of the opaque green area, you know. And it's an interesting one because you don't generally have this much sign of human habitation per se. I mean, there's often protagonists in the environment or in a scene, in an interior, but in terms of the built world, I feel like we don't normally see it with the kind of density that is in this picture.
No, I don't know if I've thought about that, but I think that's probably true. Yeah, there's like the interior paintings, which of course are of built world, but I guess it's usually all or none. So yeah, that's an interesting
Yeah.
note.
So this is a book that we're actually showing, um, and it's called Mornings, and it's a very special book that you bound with someone in Los Angeles. So we're showing it in the exhibition, and then it's a bound book of prints. The actual print images I chose are individual prints that. So we're going to look at some of these. These are also available to view if anyone has wants to see them. Do you want to talk a little bit about monotypes and sort of your attraction to them and what you're doing there, or maybe even explain to people that these are totally unique because I don't even know if people really know
Yeah,
that.
so traditionally printmaking, the entire purpose of printmaking is to make a repeatable image from um, a matrix that the artist has manipulated.
Yeah.
So a block of wood that's been carved is a stable matrix that can be reprinted to infinity with the
Hmm.
same image over and over. And metal plate etching is another way of working. Well, some point in the 1500s, artists started playing with wiping the ink away and
Hmm.
applying just ink to the plate, as well as the etched image carved
Hmm.
into the plate. And slowly that gave way to just working with ink on a metal plate to essentially make a painting on a surface, a non-porous surface, and print that onto a piece of paper. Well, so
Yeah.
you only get one, and hence the term mono.
Yeah.
But what happens, which I enjoy so much, is when you print one, you get this ghost of the image and you get these really unified halftones. Like this image here is probably the third of the series that I printed from this motif. And that brown of the background of the landscape, that brownish orange, got lighter and lighter each time. And
Yeah.
so each time I go in and paint the tree and paint the dog and the gazebo and whatnot,
Yeah.
the the value relationship shifts,
Yeah.
and it becomes that again that seriality, that
Mhm.
repeat way of making is so important to me because I get to just see different versions of the thing and then get to work from there.
Yeah.
And um, so each of these is a totally unique print. I might get five or six of a common motif, but they're all essentially
But you
singular
only
paintings.
in the end I mean you only release one. I don't know even know where the other ones go.
Yeah, I one will go in the one or two will go in the books that I make of the
Yeah.
series of prints, and then I have stacks of them at home,
Yeah.
of from the different ones. But yeah, I try to pick out the one I
Well, I
feel the
think the
most
thing about it is
akin.
that, these prints, what's interesting about them is that um, it just makes me think of Whistler is the person that I think of. I think because one is always kind of, I don't want to say peering into a Whistler, but there's a lot in there that is in there, and you can work your way through the tones to really
Yeah,
see the experience, and that's something I really feel in a lot of the monotype works. This feeling of really doing that is really beautiful.
yeah. And what's so fascinating to me about them and about the way of making and prints in general is that when you make a print, quite literally the thing that I talked about being so attracted to before happens, where the entire thing is made in one instant.
Yeah.
And so it's almost hard to make a bad print of any kind in my mind. Like
I'm
it's
sure.
always has
I'm
that
sure
because
it's
it
not hard
always
for some
has that.
people.
No, no, but it does. It always has that quality, which I'm always trying to get to, where the thing
That's
happens all
interesting.
at once,
It's
you
sort
know?
of built into it. This is so
Yeah.
good. I mean, it's a great. I love this one. This is this is a real favorite.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Well,
Thank you.
we have other pieces to look at, but we also are sort of butting up a little bit with time. So I'm going to kind of move through some of these other paintings. Um, are there anything that maybe we haven't talked about that what else is there that you might want to talk about?
Um, I guess the way of um carving into some of the paintings
Yeah.
like we see here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of the paintings come from a drawing or come from a print that I've already sort of fully realized what the composition is going to be. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to go into it knowing where things are going to go,
Yeah.
and the sort of carving into the wood and then rubbing the paint into the wood and giving myself that outline has become a fun way of working for me. And then, of course, I don't always get it right when I go to, apply the color. Like in this one,
Mm-hmm.
this started off as a carved piece of wood, and well, it still is a carved piece of wood, but I didn't like where it went. So it took weeks and weeks and weeks of adding paint and removing paint to get the surface back to an interesting place to sort of start again.
Yeah.
And that um, that frustration and that sort of hassle always, in the end, I find that those paintings feel the most satisfying to me.
Yeah. Well, you have
The ones that had that.
that, all that stuff is built in there somehow,
Hmm.
and you respond to that information that's in there as you're moving forward, looking for what this image is going to be, and it just has fiber in there. I suppose one
Yeah.
never knows what someone else will see, but I understand exactly sort of what you're describing.
Hmm.
And this one is, yeah, very direct. I mean, the feeling of the laying in of that blue, it feels like a very straightforward gesture, but it's interesting,
Yeah.
after this conversation. This is a very complicated image.
Yeah. This one was a after a few drawings that I made that uh I really, really, there's some of my favorite drawings that I've made.
Yeah.
And that can be its own challenge when I like a drawing so much. The painting
Yeah.
can take a really long time to get to a similar place,
Yeah.
to sort of exceed what the source.
But the color relationships in this, I assume those color relationships were not in the drawing.
No, not quite,
Yeah.
no.
Because the drawings you're describing are, and this one's very subtle. I mean, it's really beautiful.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, John, and thank you so much for spending time with me. This is the
Sure.
bench one that I was talking about. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to discuss your work with you here. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Um, I hope that everyone is safe and having a good summer. And if you have any questions, just send me an email or let me know. I'm delighted that you could spend some time with us today. John, thank you so much for sharing your work and talking about it. I'm really excited to show this. Tomorrow is the last day. And then there's also a book that's coming out that you can pre-order. It's John's work and James Castle's. We just actually got our second proof copy. And
All
I think
right.
I might change the cover image. We're good to go. So,
All right.
yeah, pre-order that on the website. There's a link to do that under our publications page, and let me know about any of the stuff. So, John, have a great day.
Thank you, Philip.
All right.